Hello, my name is Naomi Richardson, and welcome to another episode of the Power Chat series titled Activism and Fashion in the Community. My guest interviewee is Summer March, an educator in the Detroit community with experience in fashion. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. If you'd like to explain or introduce yourself to the audience, then go right ahead.
Yes. So, as you said, my name is Summer March, and I have been working with the Power of Girlhood for 6 years. I believe we're on year six. And I love everything that Power of Girlhood is doing. I'm really happy to be a part of their nonprofit. A little bit about me: I graduated from Wayne State University with my degree in education, and I started teaching when I was 19 years old. Before that, I always wanted to be a fashion designer. I love fashion. I know how to sew. I would draw designs. I would style people, give people makeovers. I was all glitz, glam, fashion. But when I majored in college, I did not like the program. I ended up realizing I had a really big love for education. So I went that route in terms of schooling. But I love philanthropy. I love giving back. And I kind of found a way to do that on the side as a hobby through fashion. So through a couple of nonprofits I work for, I've hosted like fashion shows, I've hosted events around fashion. So I was still able to express that love I have for fashion design. So I just recently launched Styled by Summer after, realizing that I should probably take this on a bigger level, what I was doing. So I'm happy to talk about that today and be here in this interview.
Well, thank you so much. So, the first question is, what inspired your passion for fashion and how did you transition to education?
So I really think the passion was just innate. I think it was already in me. As young as I can remember, I just loved anything that was glitz and glam and out there. Um, the earliest picture I have that I can remember taking, or someone took of me, it was me and my brother, and I have like this huge pink boa. I don't even think it was Halloween, but I don't know why I was wearing it. My parents don't remember, but it just really goes to explain like my personality. Like I love dressing up. Always love putting outfits and things together. So I think that was just already in me. And so as I'm growing older, I can style other people. I like to attend fashion shows. I like watching anything that has to do with fashion. So that was already there. My transition happened into education. Like I mentioned earlier, when I went to college to major in fashion, I did not like the program at all. I'm a big fan of That's a Raven. I know who's not, but I was a big fan of That's a Raven. And I used to love when she would, draw. She had like the book of where she would draw all her different outfits. And so I started doing that. And I just always in my head pictured like, going to school and it being this amazing experience, like on That's So Raven. And when I got to college, it was not like that. Anybody, 10 maybe 7 to 10 years ago, fashion is it still is a cutthroat industry, but I think we today are a little bit more aware of our social emotional skills and needs of humans.
Mhm.
Back then it was cutthroat. It was like everyone out for themselves and nobody was it was a lot of underhanded stuff that was happening. And I had to realize that was not my personality. I had two options. Do I just kind of play the game like everyone else? Or do I decide this is not me and stick to who I am? And I chose the latter. And I realized that I had a big passion for working with children, which is something everybody already told me. Like everyone said, you should be a teacher, and I was like, no, I'm gonna be a fashion designer. But the blessing in that is that, as I was working with kids, of course I'm going to work stylish, as I do, and the kids were loving it. Like they would always ask me questions about my clothes or what I was wearing. So even through my teaching, I've hosted like fashion shows for kids because we've learned about clothes, we've learned about they've made their own T-shirts. So I was able to incorporate a little of my passion within my purpose of education and teaching others. And I think I had to become a teacher to learn a lot of things. I work with young kids, so we're talking 4 and 5. I had to learn patience. Things are not going to be, they're not going to come to me tomorrow. I had to learn a lot of patience. I had to also learn, skills, even just like sticking to a schedule. I think any entrepreneur or anybody who doesn't have a typical 9 to 5 will tell you like it's hard sticking to a schedule when you're a creative type of person, right?
Yeah.
So I had to learn a lot of skills that pertain to working that I don't think I would have got had I gone straight into the fashion world. I had to grow those skills first. So that was kind of my transition from fashion into education. So
Wow, that's great. That's amazing. Who are your top 3 favorite designers and how have they influenced you in fashion and how you grew up?
So I definitely like Wayman and Micah. I think they're more stylists, not designers, but I feel like they style one of my favorite actresses, Tessa Thompson, and they style other celebrities on the runway too. But I just feel like everything that they put her in, she just looks amazing, and it's bold, eccentric. I like stylists slash designers who are not afraid to kind of go against
The
you know
grain.
Yep, go against the grain and kind of step out and do something different. So I love them. I am kind of an old school Coco Chanel, just I mean, classic, classic, classic. Um, I remember growing up, she was probably like one of the first designers that I really ever knew and found out about. Um, but honestly, I only have two. I feel like those are my top two. So let's stick with them.
No, that's great. I love Tessa Thompson, one of my top favorite actresses, and I definitely agree with the outfits they put her in. Marvelous. Yeah.
Yes.
How does activism and fashion intersect for you?
For me, so I have an event that I used to host years ago. It's kind of like a series of events called Art and Activism. And really, activism in itself, I think, is something else that was just part of me. I always tell people growing up, I never really got in trouble for like, missing school or just any of those things that are typical. I would always kind of get in trouble because I was sticking up for people when they were, being bullied or when I felt like, I would speak up against something that I felt wasn't right. So I've always kind of had that voice to speak up against something that I did not like, or to speak for something and highlight something that everyone, should know. So I've always kind of been an activist in that way. But I feel like arts and fashion is a very powerful way to promote whatever we're talking about. And it's just really important in activism. I'll say the Black Lives Matter movement, since that was probably the latest thing that everyone remembers, the biggest movement that we all remember. Those images and photos are so vital and important. When you're talking about the issues, of course, what we're hearing is really important, but what people are going to remember is the photos and the videos and the imagery from the movement. And
Yeah.
of course, the fashion goes along with that. Um, I wore a black Teachers Matter shirt to Walmart just to do my shopping, just normal everyday stuff. And it prompted an hour-long conversation from a woman who stopped me and was like, I disagree with your shirt. And I had the time and I was like, let's talk about it. And by the end of that conversation, just from wearing that fashion piece, I was able to change. I wasn't trying to change her mind. Of course, that's not the end goal. But her mind was changed. She's like, I understand why you wear the shirt. I understand the statement. And fashion is used in that way.
Yeah.
When you wear certain things that spark emotion, that spark conversation. And I love that fashion has the power to do that. I think regardless of even just when it has to be a political movement, just fashion in of itself makes anybody feel confident. I know that there have been days where I am like, I feel awful, I feel terrible, I don't feel like doing anything today. And then once I get dressed up and ready to go, it's like the confidence boost goes from like 0 to 100. And so you see that also even in the historical sense that fashion is used, like when we have movements, people wearing all black in solidarity, like it's powerful the way that we can use clothes to, spark some emotion and conversation. So I think it's really important when we
Yeah,
talk about
for
activism and
sure.
fashion.
When it comes to education, how do you implement intention setting in the classroom?
Ooh, so important. So I think first setting the expectations that I have in the beginning. And that's with anyone. I think a lot of times when people, and I'm so big on early childhood because I just feel like it really sets the foundation for the rest of your life. There's, kids who, and I love telling this to people, you see a lot of what kids are going to be interested in later in life in their early years. Like I had a young girl in my class 2 years ago who was obsessed with makeup. And I think a lot of times people be like, oh, don't let her play in makeup. She's growing up too fast. But at the same time, that's a form of art. And I remember giving her activities where she could I would give her like a blank face and she would, draw the makeup on there herself. And she was talented at 4. So I think just setting expectations at the beginning of what you expect from your students. And then once they kind of get the sense of, what's allowed and what's not allowed and what's going to fly in the classroom, then you start to get to know who you're working with. And I get to know all of my, I don't care how many students I have, I get to know all of them on a personal level. I ask them questions. I ask their parents questions. I like to know all the details because that's what makes a student your student.
Yeah.
I like to know if they have pets, what happened in your past, et cetera, et cetera. And then from there, I work with families, I work with the student, and we make sure that we have end goals, that we're meeting those end goals by the end of the year. So I check in with my students. I remind them anytime I see them getting off track, like, hey, we said that we were going to learn this by the end of the year. We said that our behavior was going to be this. I don't see you doing that. Let's talk about how we can, make sure
Yeah.
we're track. And that's really just with anything in my life. I make sure that I write down my own goals. And if I see my own self getting off track, I'm like, okay, wait, check in with myself. What's off here? What am I not doing? How can I get back on track to what I'm doing? And I think I have to do that with myself so I can pour that into my students and making sure that those expectations and intentions are clear.
Yeah, that's amazing. I definitely understand and get intention setting and in your personal life and in the classroom. So, last question. What is your favorite part about styling and designing events and creating connections with your clients?
Favorite part, it really is just when everything comes together. So a lot of things I do in life are stressful. Anytime you plan anything out, events, it's stressful. And I always kind of have a joke that I eat stress for breakfast. And I know it's not probably a positive thing to say, but that's kind of the mindset to have because when you're planning things, that means the stress is off of somebody else. And that's why I like to do it because I know what I'm doing. I know that it is a stressful thing trying to have all these moving parts come together for one big event. And so to not have that stress on someone and put it on myself is fine because I'm a creative person. Like I said, I'll wake up and have ideas and I'll try and make it all come together. But my favorite part is after you go through the stress and the ups and the downs and the roller coasters, it's like seeing that finished product that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Especially when it turns out exactly like a client wants, when everybody from an event is very happy and satisfied. It's like sometimes when I go through it, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be my last event. I'm not gonna do this again. And then at the end of it, when everybody's happy, I'm like, I can't wait for the next one. But I love that. I love just, setting a plan in motion, accomplishing that goal, seeing how everybody was satisfied, and then doing it all over again.
That's great. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for letting me interview you. This was definitely a breath of fresh air to hear about fashion and activism and the intersection. So I want to thank you for that and have a great day.
Thank you for having me. You have a good one too.
Goodbye, everyone.